On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Val, and Val was married to a manipulative, punishing abuser. It's a story of trauma bonding, silent treatments, rage cycles, undercutting, walking on eggshells, and exhaustion. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Val. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. And if you want to be a guest like Val is today, go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, click on the guest form button, fill out the form, and press the submit button. We also have a support group at our website with Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. So join our support group at narcissistapocalypse.com. And we also have a new newsletter. And with this newsletter, you get a free workbook from every new survivor story every week. And that is all at narcissistapocalypse.com. And today we're going to hear Val's story. And Val was in a relationship with someone who was very Jekyll and Hyde. And Val dealt with a lot of emotional withdrawal, cycles of abuse, and intermittent reinforcement. And that kept her always in reach of this dangling carrot, these breadcrumbs that she would get here and there. And this was a very long-term control where the mood shifts really controlled everything. You're just trying to figure these things out while you yourself are just getting depleted until you have nothing left. And I know Val is going to validate so many of you out there today. So now I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Val, the floor is now yours.
Well, I was the last of three children, and I think those are always the ones known to be the clowns. And yeah, it fits the bill. I just came out rolling and laughing, and I thought everything was good and everything was nice. And I really do see the world through rose-colored glasses, I have to say. And so I didn't think any had a happy childhood. I didn't think anything was unusual, different. My parents didn't, drink and beat us or anything. But as I got older, there were some patterns with my mom that became clearer. And, I think you start noticing, oh, why is this always happening or that always happening? And I was about 8, maybe 9 when I was like, we're leaving another place mad. And, I didn't know what it was. But there was always problems with my mom, and especially when involved members of my dad's family. So he had 4 brothers spread across Canada, and they'd have these family reunions, and he was having a great time, but his focus, I think, wasn't on her, and it seemed to be a trigger. And so there was always an issue when we were with his family and many other social situations. I just recall the day I realized she was the problem was we were leaving a family reunion from Hay River, which is about a 14-hour drive from where we lived. And we had to pack up in a hurry because somebody said something. And here we were leaving in the middle of this family reunion. And it was a fiasco this time. Like the other brothers were like, go, don't go, don't go. And that was the end of it. And I realized in that drive home for 13 hours or 14 hours of nobody talking, I thought, you know what? No, she's the problem here. There's one thing that keeps happening, and it always involves her. And I realized that moment that I could not use her as a role model. I didn't know what it was, but something was wrong, right? And as time wore on, it became even more clear. So my brother's the oldest. He's 8 years older than me. My sister's 5 years older than me. And then it was me. And my mom would always be treating, how I saw it was, she was a good mom to me and my brother, and she didn't do anything to us, but she would target my sister. And I knew it was wrong, but it was really clear that she was always really focused on my sister and looking for evidence of things that she did wrong, like going into her room when she's not home and looking for things and listening in on phone calls and accusations. And so after a while, that was also a pattern. And we could see, as a child, you know something's wrong, but you don't really know what it is. And then I think one of the worst epiphanies, I don't think it was an epiphany, an experience, was one year she really wanted this beauty Barbie for Christmases. Barbie, a great big Barbie doll head that you practice doing hair on, and she thought she might want to be a hairdresser. So she was begging and begging and begging for this gift. And on Christmas Day, I get past the gift, I open it, and it's the beauty Barbie. My mom gave it to me, and my sister sat there crying, and I thought, oh my God, I felt horrible, even being a kid, and I think I was maybe about 9 by then. I didn't know what to do, but one day she asked if she could borrow it, and I said, yeah. And, I basically never asked for it back because A, I didn't ask for the beauty Barbie, but B, she wanted it more. And I didn't know what was going on. So we just left it at that. But it absolutely did affect things. I think somewhere along the lines, I didn't want to be like my mom. And I realized this very young. And then I started taking mental notes. Don't do this, don't do that, because I didn't want to be like her. And I think then what you maybe do, you need a parent as a role model. So I think maybe I was more like my dad. I'm like, okay, he's more chill, and he would roll her eyes, or he always did this mutter sputter thing when she'd go, oh, and he would just kind of brush things off, go, and just kind of keep things calm. And I think I probably picked up that way of dealing with it than her way, because I don't want to be like her. I didn't also know what I was dealing with my mother when I met my spouse, my future spouse. So I didn't really see it in him early on. And there was no reason for me to even be looking, because A, I didn't know what I was dealing with. B, we were friends for like about a year before we started dating. And so there was no love bombing. There was none of this nonsense that you hear about. And it was just sort of a natural thing. And definitely as things started to change, I think I didn't advocate for myself as much. And I know I did in the beginning when we were first together dating for the first number of years. But I think over time, his behaviors presented themselves and got worse. And I went from advocating to myself or defending myself to just being worn down. And that's what I saw in my dad.
So before we get to talking about the abuse part of your relationship, you grow up, you eventually do meet this person. So tell us about, what your life was like right before you meet this person and the meeting, you're friends for a bit, and what is their family like, and what is this person's role in their family before we get to the abuse part of the story.
His parents, I do remember early on, if we would go to his house or, people would meet up or whatever it was, his parents were always home, but just, watching TV. They never had friends. They never went out. They never did a lot. And I would say to him, like, how come your parents don't have any friends? Like, because most of the time people are more active in that, but it was always, the two of them. And then they did have visitors and stuff that would drop in from out of town for an afternoon or a visit, but nothing really regular. And that kind of was unusual. And he was an only child. He, I think definitely had a good upbringing. They always made sure he had, what he needed and got the piano lessons or the normal kid stuff. He always would say that he was treated like a cat. Like he said, he always kind of alluded that he didn't feel cared for. And I didn't ever really challenge him on that. That's somebody's experience of their life. And, you can't really argue with that, right? I would say, nothing stood out about him in the friend group about being different or unusual, other than I remember he had a nice car. And yeah, I met him when I was in my, I think I was 20-ish. Everybody was just sort of trying to get their careers going and worked. And the the only time that I saw something that stuck in my mind to this day. So I guess it's worth talking about. A friend of mine had gone out on a date with him a couple years previous, and then I guess her parents didn't like him, so she broke up with him. And it was like they went on one date kind of thing. It wasn't a serious thing, but she wanted to go see him one day when we were out driving around, had nothing to do. So we stopped by his house, and this is very early on. And I guess he was on a night shift, but he got up and he sat on the couch and basically just acted horribly. And I was shocked because here's a guy in his 20s and, two nice ladies sitting there, and he was acting like out of sorts. And this was my maybe second time meeting him. And she's like, oh, I guess he was tired because he was on a night shift. And I thought I was quite shocked by how he behaved. However, it never happened again in the times after that. So that was probably a red flag, And yeah, there was the friends group, people were just going out and being kids and driving around, nothing really stood out to me at that point.
So eventually you do start dating. And how does that begin? And how does your relationship at that point start to evolve and then devolve?
Well, we just started spending more and more time together, like outside our friends group. We were having fun. This went on for a long time, to the point where his friends would say, what are you doing? Like, are you going to make this official? Clearly you guys like hanging around. And so after about a year, he's like, oh, do you want to be boyfriend, girlfriend? And it kind of transitioned from there. But it just always just seemed so natural. So there was no sort of issues. And after we'd been dating about, I think, 4 or 5 months. So I'd known him for about a year and a half pretty well. And this is the first time that I can't forget, where he picked me up, like everything was fine. He picks me up, we go out to drive to pick up his friend, and he's different in the car, completely different. Like it was like we had a fight different. And I was like, oh, what's wrong? And there was very little communication. It was very strange. And I remember thinking, well, he's acting like we just had a fight, but we didn't. What's going on? And I'm like, And then we pick up his friend, and he's completely normal with his friend. I thought, oh, okay, so this is directed at me. It's not that just he's in a bad mood today and treating everybody like this. No, it's me. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea. So we go out, we go to meet a whole bunch of other friends at a dance place or bar thing. And we have this table that kind of stretches out looking at the dance floor. So he's not talking to me that night. He's completely ignoring me. We all get our drinks. And it was so embarrassing. I think maybe the other friends we met, I can't remember who they were, so I don't think I knew them very well. And here I am, just like completely awkward. And I tried to engage with him, and he clearly wasn't going to that night. So I finished my drink and I left. And this is like, I'm maybe 20, 21. And like I said, I fought back then. I would say things or stand up for myself or whatever. In this case, I thought, I'm just going to leave. So I was walking up the street to look for a taxi. And then all of a sudden he was going by in his car going, get in. And I wouldn't get in. So he kept going around the block and around the block. And finally I thought, okay, well, we both live out in the same area. And if I take a taxi, I'm going to need a bank loan. So I got in the car, he drove me home. We didn't say a word. I think about a week later, I had to go over to his house to pick up something that I had left there, some inner tube or something. And we ended up getting back together. And the reason why, and this is the thing, that was a red flag. If somebody acted like that now, there would be no second chance. But also, if somebody had acted like that earlier on, like I had known him for a year and a half, and this was the first sign of trouble. And I remember thinking, ooh, I was pretty young, didn't know what it was, knew it wasn't right. And I thought, I've known him for a year and a half. There's been no problems. I'll just give this a pass. Oh, big mistake. Because that pattern. And I think you probably know all the terms for it, like the idealization, and then they do something like the devaluation, make you feel bad. It just kept going in cycles for the rest of my life in different ways that I didn't know what it was. And the other thing is, I think he would learn from those experiences not to do that in public. So that time he did that in front of friends, and people could have, been a witness to it. After that, anytime he did stuff, it was usually in private. There wasn't any outbursts in public that people would say, "Oh my God." So I think, when he screwed up when he was young, he adjusted himself a fair bit. Other than that really big red flag, there wasn't a whole lot of issues. Like, that's normal people stuff or anything that happened. I don't remember it standing out in my mind like that night. So we were together for about 8 years when our daughter was born. And the change there was a little bit of subtleties during my pregnancy. So, if I had like a really, really sore back and couldn't do the gardening for long, he would ignore me, give me the silent treatment. Like, if I wasn't, you know, it made me feel like I was using my pregnancy as an excuse, and I never would do that to anybody. But it was subtle. It wasn't nice. It wasn't nice. So, and then after she was born, there was again more subtleties, and it's almost like you can't put your finger on it. But all of a sudden, maybe a change. They're doing something now that they didn't do before, or something is now a priority that wasn't before. And I can't really give you any really good examples, but it's very subtle. He had contempt towards her at times. So at times he would be, trying to be the dad. And other times, I remember we were out, we used to do a lot of walking, and we were walking along with the stroller because she was a little bit fussy in the evenings. And he was pushing the stroller that time, and he was like pushing it over the sidewalk really hard on the things. And I'm like, hey, so, this is early on. I grabbed the stroller from him. I'm like, get out of here, right? So it was just instinctive. So there was a few things like that, but nothing super major. I did want a second child, and I did have this little notion one day of, you feel like it's like maybe instinct speaking, going, should you have another child? There had been some subtle changes. It's like, but you think it's new parents adapting. And something told me I had to have the second child, that I needed to have the second child, and that it wouldn't be easy, but I should have the second child. And I don't know where this feeling was coming from or what have you. So when we have the second child, I think we were home maybe 3 days when he moved to the basement. His main go-to was the withdrawal or the silent treatment. And over time, this became evident that this was his way of getting attention. And if I didn't respond, he'd change tactics. But I didn't know when I was in it, that's what he was doing. So he'd have breakfast or be around for dinner. He would be in the evening around watching a show, but then would go to the basement as I suppose in retrospect, he was punishing me because I'm sure it's because he was no longer the center of attention. But when I was in it, I didn't know all this. I didn't have all this information. We had always been friends. We had a good relationship. I was like, well, so I tried to help him for the first 6 months. I'm like, what's wrong? Is it depression? Is it this? Is it that? And the stories kept changing. One day it would be depression. One day it wouldn't be. And I was like, what the? And after about 6 months, I thought, you know what? He's doing his thing. I can't, I have to focus on these kids. So I stopped asking. I stopped trying. I thought, it is what it is. And another 6 months goes by, and then he pops up out of nowhere. I'm moving back upstairs. And even then I was like, yeah, good for you. And so I think he sensed, in retrospect, when I look at the patterns, when he sensed that I maybe didn't care or was pulling back or he wasn't getting the response he wanted, he would then change. And I think he maybe instinctually thought maybe I had one foot out the door. And around that time, he always complained about his job being the problem. And so around that time, he ended up changing getting out of the business he was in. And, oh, everything was going to be better now. He was going to do this or that. And, that lasted. Maybe he could be good for about a year at a time before something else would happen. So the pattern that I was in that I didn't know was a pattern, because you can't identify it when you're in it necessarily, but he would try to be better, behave, and then for whatever reason it would devolve again. He blamed it on his career. The focus was always on his happiness. Oh, so he wanted to change careers, and then when he had a bit of a severance package from that, when that ran out, he didn't have a backup plan. So there was no accountability for, oh, well, you just quit your job, you better have something else to go to. It always had to go into an emergency mode. And then over the years, like, he wanted to get out of that business, did a few different things. Then he decides he wants to go back in the business. And as an example, now he's like, I need a workspace to work in. And, he didn't want to just work out of our garage. So he got this big idea that he wanted to buy a workshop. And so we went to look, and long story short, we ended up buying 2 instead of 1, even though I only wanted to get 1. And then I find out years later, he had it set up in his name with me as the guarantor, but yet wanted to make me responsible for renting the place out and leasing it. Over the years, we did different things. And I knew his name was on it, but I didn't realize that it gave me no rights, like, because we were married. And so my lawyer at one point, doing my taxes, said, you're paying taxes on this, but your name's not on title. That's not right. So I had to pay money to get my name on title. And he wasn't happy about that. And I thought it was an oversight. In retrospect, I think it was quite purposeful. I think he had it set up in his name, pin all the responsibility on me. So maybe down the road, if the relationship didn't go in the right way, he would walk away with that. And it wasn't just he did it with that. He attempted to do it with other things. But my radar was up on that. And what I didn't understand was his intent behind it. And I thought his other ideas were not good, but I didn't realize they were really to swindle me out of any money that I would be entitled to until later. So things like wanting to buy a house with his parents in his name, and things like odd things like that. And so that was the financial part. Then there was the things like accomplishments. So once the kids got to school, I wanted to work on getting my degree, because I wanted to be able to get a day job, because my previous job I'd work evenings and the kids were getting older and I needed to have my evenings free. So I was working on my degree 1 course at a time. Took me 3 years, and there's a graduation ceremony day. Didn't plan a dinner, didn't plan to have somebody pick up the kids, nothing. So we go to this, and he says at my grad ceremony, oh, well, you got a degree while I watch TV. And he has to make it about him and how he's the victim, so that I don't get any congratulations. So we go to the ceremony thing. One of my friends is there, and they invite us out for dinner. And he's like, no, we got to go pick up the kids. So we go pick up the kids from daycare or after school care. And I said, okay, well, we're going to go out for dinner to celebrate. And we, if we went out for dinner anytime, we would have a glass of wine. Well, this time, oh, no, he's not going to have a glass of wine. I said, well, I am, because I'm celebrating my degree. Oh, well, another $10 on the bill or something like that. And I thought, this is so bizarre, because any other time this wouldn't be an issue. So he's instinctively, intentionally, I don't know what, always had to downgrade anything that was an accomplishment to me to ruin it. And then that would be roll into birthdays too, like, it's almost like he would go out of his way to ruin it. It could be that he would, I'd want to go to my favorite place for dinner. And, it could be that now he's like, oh, the service here is bad. Oh, the food's not as good. Forget to make a reservation, pout during dinner, pretend to be tired, like anything to ruin it and make it all about him. a lot of years, there was nothing on my birthday, nothing, not even an acknowledgement, not even like, and he would blame it on stress or being busy. Like it just went on and on. There was a couple times over the years where he did make an effort. On my 40th, he planned a dinner, invited the friends, but then would complain about the bill after. Always something. So I think there was maybe in the 35 years we were together in total, and that includes dating, there was maybe 4, 5 birthdays maybe where he actually just acted normal, booked a restaurant. We went out for a nice dinner, maybe invited some friends, maybe 5 times. And so these things, you're always getting worn down, it's always about them. They don't give you anything back. But it was just very kind of just always chipping at you, all the stuff that he would want. It's almost like he felt he deserved it, and I should find a way to make it happen. And if I didn't respond to him, he'd maybe get angry or punish me in other ways. But yeah, there was this sense of entitlement, but no accountability for anything. So over the years, anything we wanted to buy this warehouse, but he'd saddle me with having to lease it out or rent it out. It was like that with everything. And if I asked him to do something, he would forget, couldn't get to it today, didn't have this part or that part or something. And if it went on and on to the point where I'd get mad, then I was out of control. And I said, but I've asked you 4 times. And so if it's important, right? So you learn to let things go that aren't that important. And the things that are, it really only happens if it's important to him. And so this became a pattern over time too. And the level of selfishness is unbelievable to me when I look back in retrospect of all the things that we've went through in all these years, So the other thing about not being accountable, even his own parents, he wouldn't do what he was supposed to do for them. Well, I don't know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what they need. And I said, well, you check in with them and you ask, right? So I would, because his dad had to go for certain treatments, I'd go to his doctor's appointments, hop in and see how he was doing with his treatment. And yet my partner had the actual child. he never did anything. And then same thing, his dad passed away, his mom got dementia. I was the one dropping in, making sure she was okay, getting the groceries. And, I did say to him at one point, okay, you have to do the doctor's appointments or something, so he did do a few things. Otherwise, I would have had to do everything. I just kind of had to set a boundary with him all the time about stuff, or he would just have me do everything, and he would just sit there and eat popcorn all day, I'm sure of it.
And during this time, do anger outbursts occur?
So yeah, those cycles, that they probably were always there in a milder way. And it wasn't until quite recently we had moved into our new house. A few months later, we went on a holiday, and I could tell when we had moved into our last house, he was really trying to change his behavior. Like it was like a new start. And he didn't have to tell me. I knew what he was doing. He was really trying to be different. And the first bit was good. We went on a holiday, had a good time. And then the last couple of days of the holiday, something changed again. And he would always say, oh, I'm just thinking about work, or, but always in the last 2 days. So this trip was after we moved into our last house. Things were going well. There was no problems. We had a good time. There's this shift. We get home. He doesn't talk to me for 5 days. And he would just go into these sort of withdrawal states-ish and then snap out of it like nothing was wrong, like nothing happened. I'm like, oh, and so that time I said, okay. So we went, this time we had a good holiday. We come home, you don't talk to me for a week. So I really got mad because it was so apparent. It was just that this couldn't have been just random. And so I really got mad. And then he said, well, it's depression. And I think I screamed, finally get to the doctor. I'm tired of hearing this excuse. Like I really lost it. And I guess that's what it takes, is he went and got on some antidepressants. And did it solve the cycles? No. Why? It didn't solve the cycles because it wasn't depression, but what it did do was smooth it out a bit. So what I call his cycles or his outbursts weren't as bad for a while. So he would say, oh, really, I really felt that. Like, so he did identify them as cycles too. He goes, it would have been so much worse if I wasn't on this antidepressant. So there was some progress made with that, and sort of went okay for a while, but really, I think with time and age, these things just get worse. So from what I saw, it became very cyclical. So I thought, okay, I gotta start observing this and writing this down, and then I'll talk to him. So I marked it on my little phone, flame on my calendar every 6 weeks. And I went, okay, there is a pattern here. So after about 4 months or 5 months, I showed him the calendar. I said, look, this is almost like a menstrual cycle, except it's 6 weeks on a dime. I said, there's an issue here. And I said, it's really affecting me because I know you're going to do it. And I'm always, oh my God, when's the next outburst? Like, because it's going to became a cycle of a change in behavior, like pulling back, a little quieter, the calm before the storm, and you could feel the tension rise. And then there would be a random outburst about anything that he could use. It came down to a crumb on the counter while I'm making his dinner. Or, oh, he comes raging through the door, the fridge needs to be cleaned, anything. And he'd go into these outbursts of rage, not physically, but have these outbursts and then withdraw for 4 or 5 days. And so when I talked to him about it, and I said, I really need you to talk to the doctor about this because it's affecting me. I'm worried about when it's going to happen. He just ripped the paper up and threw it away. And I said, well, that's not really going to work, but he wouldn't address the issues. And then I think around that time, his eyes, I felt crazy telling anyone about it. So I don't think I told many people. He would come in during these fits of rage, and it's like he wasn't there. I would look at his eye, and it's the kind of look in someone's eyes that makes your stomach drop, and you get scared because I've never seen this look on him before. It's like he wasn't there, and it scared me more. So I would withdraw and start walking on eggshells because he was already in his fit of rage and withdrawn, but I didn't want to trigger it or make it worse because of these eyes I was seeing were scaring me. And so I would tell him about it. I said, your eyes are going black and you're scaring me. And he's like, well, tell me when it's happening. I said, no, I'm too scared. And because I don't want to make anything worse, right? And have come to learn, not until about a year after I left, and reading lots of books to understand this, that this might be a dissociation as well. And I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And I'm pretty sure that he knows he does it. How aware, I don't know. But he said earlier on, when we were younger, he said, oh yeah, people sometimes say I'm like two people. And it is the Jekyll and Hyde thing, but he doesn't have control over it. And, you can't really make anything better if you're not going to go for help, right?
So at this point, you've been in this relationship for a long time now, and things are slowly, they've gotten worse and worse and worse, and he's showing himself more to the point where you said now you're walking on eggshells. So what are the things that are keeping you in this relationship? Are you scared to leave? Do you fear how you're going to live outside of this relationship? Do you feel obligated to him? Do you feel guilty if you leave him? What's kind of going on with the reasons why you're staying?
That's a really good question. And I remember coming home one day, parking my car in the garage and thinking, I don't know what kind of mood he's going to be in. And I'd been dealing with this my whole life. But for that day, I went, do I like this or something? Like, this is terrible. I don't know what I'm coming home to. I don't want to come home. And why am I doing this? But I really didn't know. And this trauma bonding thing, I'm telling you, it is a thing. I didn't know what I was dealing with or doing, but his things, silent treatments, he would withdraw love and affection and whatever. And I guess they get you doing that. They'll give you a little crumb. You're here, you're there. You're just, what's that intermittent reward thing where you'd come home and some days it'd be good and you'd have a good night and you just don't know. And I think it really is in your brain. And even after I left, when I get to the story of how I left and what I had to do, was because I knew I had to be so far away from him that I couldn't get back because I knew I'd want to. Can you imagine?
So from here, eventually you do retire. So tell us about this.
The year I retired, unfortunately, in the last month of me working, our son was still living at home at that point, and he got quite ill with a gastrointestinal problem. And it was really traumatizing. Like he was really sick. I was so worried. I was just, And so I was glad that I was going to be retiring so I could focus on his health. And luckily things resolved over a month or two and he was fine. And we had a trip planned in the following fall. And unfortunately, we had gone scuba diving on this holiday, and I'm a really scaredy cat water person, but he wanted me to learn how to scuba dive so that we could do this here and there on holidays. And this one holiday after I retired, we got into an unexpected current and we had to all of a sudden grab a rock. Well, he grabbed the rock, I missed, and I got swept away in this current. And this is my worst nightmare, my absolute worst nightmare. I talk about it all the time, how forget Freddy Krueger. The Perfect Storm is my nightmare movie. And so he knows how scared I am. And the dive master was able to rescue me and we got back to the boat and everything was fine. And again, he made it about him. I was in a state of shock, ready to collapse. And so I was really there was no support, not a hug and oh my God, there was nothing except for he turned it around to himself. And so that just really kind of just magnified things for me. And you can't say to someone like that, well, you're not being very supportive of me. You're making it all about yourself and you're trapped on a holiday with this person. You can't say anything. And so we had got home and then me being retired, he was angry before the holiday. He was okay-ish on the holiday, then angry when we got home again. I thought, interesting, right? You're angry all the time, but you can go on a holiday. And that following year, because I had retired, I had a little extra payout from my work, and we decided to take a little extra holiday in the January. And this is the thing, I stayed so long in this relationship that I just started breaking down one day, and I didn't know what that was either. I am a mentally stable person. I'm not emotionally unstable and crying all the time. Well, I was crying all the time. I was exhausted and I didn't know what this was because no amount of sleep was going to fix it. It was like my soul had left my body, kind of fatigue. It was unbelievable. Headaches, it's like somebody flipped the switch and said, that's it. And unfortunately, we're overseas on a holiday, and this keeps happening. And instead of him supporting me, he's angry, he withdraws, he ignores me. And so finally on the trip, I said, I want to go home early, which is unheard of for me to want to go home from a holiday. So long story short, we get home. He goes into a dissociative cycle again that lasts for 5 days. Then he comes out of it. And then at this point, I said, okay, I need you to go see the doctor and address this before you decide to move back to the bedroom. Oh, you don't want me back? And I said, I want you to get this addressed. He just storms by me and does what he wants anyway. And so this is all just sort of leading up to when we get back from this holiday, he said he would go on the holiday. He did admit to a lot of things, and he said he would get help, but he didn't. He never does. They never do, right? Follow through. So I said, okay, well, if you're not going to go, I'll go. So I started seeing someone, and that's when I find out my symptoms are like, there's only so much of this you can take in a relationship, and it's emotional abuse, and I'm basically breaking down from it. And it was really scary because I couldn't tell, like, I'm pretty solid person, I think. People don't complain to me. And I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't tell that he kept changing the stories of this, that, everything. And I just basically started seeing this psychologist, and she didn't tell me you're in an abusive relationship, you have to leave. They won't. They're licensed to keep the marriage together, right? So she did let it slip that I was in an emotionally abusive relationship and needed to get out. And that she said that in a reactatory statement one day, and I'm like, what? So I started looking into this, and book after book after book, it was like I was reading my life in these books, and I couldn't believe it. And the more I learned, it was just horrifying. It was absolutely horrifying to realize what you're dealing with, and you're still living with this person, trying to process this, trying to get better from a breakdown. And really, my instinct was to leave right when we got back from a holiday. Just wanted to get away, but I calmed myself down, told myself to get some therapy. You got to think with a straight mind here. And after about 6 months, I did start to feel better physically and emotionally, but I could still see the patterns of what he was doing. And the more I learned, the more horrifying it was, because he just checked every box, every single box on a template of what these people do. And where it got really scary was when I needed a break from him, and I said, "Oh, I just want to go away for a few days." No, we do everything together. I said, "Well, that's not a healthy relationship, you know." And he's like, "No, I don't want you to go away. We're having problems, and I don't feel it's all about him, right?" And I said, "Well," my friend was coaching me, "Tell him it's not about him." So I tried that. Doesn't matter. I said, "I'm talking about what I need," but it didn't matter. So the psychologist I was working with said, "Well, don't ask him. Tell him you're going, and have an anchor date of when you'll be back." So I did. Basically, I said, "I'm going away for 10 days," and he acted like he didn't care. And as soon as I left, it was like I was gone maybe 2 hours, and he's texting me. And over the course of the coming days, like, it wasn't relentless, but it was pretty constant. All of a sudden, I'm gone for 2 days. No, actually 24 hours. And he's texting me going, "Oh, I think I know what it is now. La, la, la." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" He goes, "Well," he goes, "when you left, I thought maybe it is me." I said, "Oh, really? Like, what do you think it is?" And he sends me back a description of a dependent personality. And I thought, good try. And while I was gone, the behaviors I saw were even more scary, because he was always acted like he didn't care, he was secure. Well, hacking into my online accounts, I got password change notifications, tracking, like doing texting constantly. And then, I signed up with a psychologist. So it took me, I had to leave. All of a sudden, he has all this insight. "Oh, I have a personality disorder. I'm going to sign up to see a psychologist. My appointment's on Wednesday." I'm like, oh, amazing epiphany in 24 hours. See, now I'm sitting back and I'm observing, almost like an outsider at this point, rather than being manipulated by it. I took off my rose-colored glasses and I started watching, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And so he has an appointment with his psychologist on the Wednesday, and then has to phone me again when I said I needed a break. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, it's okay, it's all okay. It's just anxiety." And I said, "No, it isn't." And he's like wanting to make long-term plans. I said, "No, I'm not. I don't want to plan anything. You can't go to one session and say everything's fine, right?" So over the course of the 10 days, the paranoia just went through the roof. like doing things like, oh, I sent a piece of cake to your hotel room, but you're not there. And it's because I had told him after I went to this place, I was going to my friend's place. But it was quite shocking to see the behaviors when he felt he was losing control of me. And it scared me even more because I'm like, I can't tell this guy I want a divorce or separation because that's a threat to control, right? So basically I just kept up with my psychologist stuff, and I, with his behaviors, they were just so clear to me. I just got so exhausted that I just couldn't keep up. I think just out of pure exhaustion, it wasn't intentional. I just couldn't respond to his nonsense anymore. And when I didn't, then he really did change tactics. It was so classic because he would start with the silent treatment, withdraw, and he wants me to come and say, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Well, when that didn't work, he tried the superficial charm. Oh, I'll bring you a cup of coffee, or, oh, do you want a hug today? Like performative, because he would never give me a hug when I wanted a hug. And if he did, it would be lame. And now he's offering them, and he's trying every tactic in the book to kind of smooth things over, but only for a minute or two. Nothing was sustained, which I found even more funny. It wasn't funny, but I'm like, wow, that didn't work. So an hour later, you're going to try this. And once you have the education, you can see it. So when I started to kind of feel a little bit better, I think I also realized that it wasn't going to be sustainable because his behaviors weren't going to change. He wasn't going to address them. And I started to get these ideas on how to get out of there. And I knew in the books, you can't sit down and talk to somebody about a separation or divorce, especially somebody that's controlling. And having read the books, I know if he got a whiff of this, I know he would have tracked my phone, my car. He knows the technology. He would have done that. So it scared me even more to think, wow, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I have to do. And so over the course of maybe a week or so, I started making cancelable plans. So I had this pottery weekend booked on an island close by, and idea came one night, maybe I can get from there out of the country, because I needed to be so far away that I wouldn't be able to come back. I had looked at an apartment in town, but I knew it wouldn't be far enough away. Like he would be looking for me, not to beat me up, but try to reel me back in with all his lies and promises. And I knew now what I was dealing with, and I knew that I would want to go back. So I wanted to go so far away and keep busy so that I wouldn't get drawn in, because I knew now if I left like that and went back, I would never get out again. I knew it. And so I had to go and make sure I had an infrastructure that could keep me going. And so I booked this cancelable flight. And then the next night, the idea came up and booked something to do. So I booked into some spa. Then I got on a wait list for a pottery thing. And I basically flew to Greece with only 2 weeks planned. And I didn't know what I was going to do after that. And I just thought, well, I'll figure it out. So I went to this pottery weekend on a Friday. And of course, I had to get things ready ahead of time. So I was sneaking around that whole week. God, it was terrible. I opened a storage unit and I snuck stuff over there. And he's so absorbed with himself, he didn't notice a thing. I had to, bring my bigger items over to my brother's house. So I was basically just kind of setting things up that he couldn't see. I did one day out of the blue, I went and opened another bank account. And it was almost like at that point, my body was taking over. I felt like I was dissociating a bit, just like, because I would be driving to do an errand, and then I'd go open a bank account in some other bank. And slowly things started to come together. And when I left for that pottery weekend on the Friday, it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday course. I didn't go on the Sunday. I took a float plane to the airport and took a flight to Greece, and then sent him a letter and said, I'm not coming home. I'm okay. I'm safe. Don't bug my friends and family because I didn't tell them where I'm going. And yeah.
And what was the aftermath of all of that when it came to divorce, your kids, and finances?
Yeah. So so just dialing back to the kids for a minute, they were both moved out of the house. But my son had been at the house until a couple months before I left. So he had seen both kids were always complaining about their dad's behavior. Even that year, my daughter was sending me articles on autism saying, oh, do you think dad has a, because they were always like, something, why does he do this? Why does he do that? And my son was at home and saw things devolving. And he even said to me one day, I give this relationship like 3 months. And I said, not even really. But they knew. So when I left, I sent him a letter before I got on the plane. And it was later at night. And I didn't want to disturb the kids. They're working adults. They don't want a letter from their mom on 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, right? And I didn't want to wake them up with a phone call. So I thought, I'll wait till I get to where I'm going. And when I got there, it was like, say, 4 a.m. for them. So still not a good time. And then in that time, and I think if I could go back in time, that's one thing I would change. I should have just woken them up and told them what was happening, because the ex-husband in the meantime is texted, not even a phone call, my daughter saying, your mom left, we're getting a divorce. And then I think the kids were so worried in that time, I don't think he told them, because I said in my note to him, I'm safe, I'm fine, just, don't, but I don't think he told the kids that. I think he just told them that I'd left. They didn't know where I was. They were really worried. And so when I did get in contact with them, they were in shock, of course. And, I explained to them, I had to go. And unfortunately, that was a turning point that kind of exposed a lot more than I thought this would be. So my son was upset, of course, but my daughter reacted quite differently. So she had complained about her dad bitterly and, this and that, send me these articles. But right out of the gate, this is in our first or second text or conversation, she says, I'm not going to have a relationship with you if you don't treat me right. And I'm like, what? Like, we had never had any problems. I had really good relationships with my kids. I did everything with them, like everything. There were never any problems. And for her to just say that out of the blue, I thought, oh. And over the course of, since I've left her, she said she wanted to talk to me when I got back, and wanted to wait till then. But when I got back, didn't want to talk till after Christmas, and so on. And then when we finally had a conversation after Christmas over the Zoom, she's very, basically I called it the echo of all the behaviors that my ex-partner would do. Like, one conversation with her one week, the next week a second conversation, then she would be like, no, I didn't say that, it's this, not that. And so I thought, the ground is shifting beneath me all the time. Here we go. And so unfortunately, over the course of the last year and a half, any contact I've had with her, she either tells me she doesn't want to talk to me, and if she contacts me, she'll be like, oh, I miss you, I want to get our relationship back on track. And then she gets upset, and that's the end of it. So it's cyclical with her too. The last conversation I had with her is the same thing. I get a text out of the blue, I want to get our relationship back on track. And she said, a few things. I said, well, I've always told you the truth about everything. And then it went into accusing me of leaving her dad for another fellow. And I said, no, I didn't leave him for anybody. I'm on my own. And then when she doesn't get the answer she wants, then she doesn't respond to me. And so I started working with a psychologist last year that specializes in this dynamic. And she said, it's going to be the same thing with your daughter repeatedly your whole life. The butter up, the want to get something, the devaluation, the discard. And I'm just not sure going forward what we'll be able to manage. So that is to be announced. We'll see. And my son, he's a completely different character. He's just so upset by all of this, even though he knew. His way of handling it is with anger instead of talking about his feelings, of course. So when I got back, we went out for dinner. And so their relationship with their dad is different than mine. And I think they have to have a relationship with their dad without me there for them to experience firsthand what I've experienced in a different way. And so I know I will have my son back in my life, but I don't know how long it's going to take until he has to just experience that, I guess.
And how has your healing process been?
Well, I have done everything that I was just naturally drawn to that I think really helped. Like I did that trip where I kept busy doing art and hobbies and exercise and yoga. And when I'm home, I have art and hobbies and work and friends. And it's just one foot in front of the other. The first year was just, I can't even describe it. Absolutely horrible. I don't know how people do it. I feel like there's absolutely no resources out there for this. There's a women's transition house and they offer housing. And I didn't feel, at this point, I didn't think of myself as an abused woman. I did not think of myself that way. And I didn't want to take resources away from someone who was, if you can imagine. It's ridiculous. So I didn't want to use their housing program because I thought I can support myself, I'll do it. And I ended up doing pet sitting. In retrospect, I wouldn't have gotten any help anyway because you have to be under a certain income. So there really was no help. And so I did my pet sitting. I did this expensive psychologist I found. I was basically working to pay for those things. And then eventually with the pet sitting, I did that for a year and a half. And then I kind of got tired of moving around because it's usually every 2 or 3 weeks you have to move. And so I rented an apartment and I have angels. I tell my friends I have angels because when I got on that plane to go to Greece, it was like standing at the edge of a cliff, asking to jump, just knowing, trusting that I would land softly. And this is how I felt when I got on the plane, that I was just really taking a chance. And everything has been as smooth as it could be as far as the staying away, coming back, getting these pet sits. Then our house sold and I found a place that I could purchase that was in an area I wanted to be in. And the possession date lined up with, it was just, things since I have left have been amazing. I just had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And a big part of my therapy too is I started writing my book last year because I was so horrified with this whole process of I did not know what I was dealing with all these years. And it was because I didn't know what it was. I looked up different things over the years because I knew there was something wrong that I couldn't put my finger on it. And when you look up the word manipulation, well, I didn't know what that really meant as I'm finding out. I think to me, manipulation is, oh, do you want this cookie? Oh, do 10 sit-ups. No, manipulation, that's not manipulation. So once I learned the behaviors and observed them in my partner, I thought, I just want to help one other person avoid this. And what I wanted to do is write a book with how these behaviors interweave into your life. So that's why I wanted to give the examples of the birthdays, the anniversaries, all the events that display this behavior. You know what I mean? So instead of just saying someone's manipulative, well, what does that actually mean? And what blame, when somebody's blame shifting, what is that like? And, so I just wanted to tell the story with real life examples. Maybe somebody else will benefit from it.
And if you had any words of wisdom for everyone listening, what would they be?
Well, trust your gut instinct and, listen to your body. And I know that sounds crazy, but early on, I had a feeling that I didn't know what it was. And now when I feel that feeling, I trust it. And so whenever you think somebody's off, or you had an interaction with someone and you feel yucky later, or you have this pit in your stomach, or your blood boils, follow those instincts, because your body knows before your mind knows. It's amazing if you can tune into that. But also, education, but I think almost this should be brought into the schools. Like, what are dynamics of a good relationship and a bad relationship? And I think people can only just educate themselves, but I think it's difficult when you don't know what you're dealing with. So podcasts like what you're doing is important, because people can hear the stories in different ways, because there's different types, right? And there's depends on how smart they are, and the behaviors change. They're not, one size doesn't fit all is in how they act. And my ex was the victim, and would always behave in public, so nobody believes that he does these things.
Well, Val, I really want to thank you for being here with us today and sharing your story, how you felt and how you got through everything. And you're going to validate a lot of people today. So just a big thank you for being here.
Well, thanks a lot for having me.
Well, thank you, Val, for being our guest once again. And if you want to be a guest like Val was today, go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, click on the guest form button, fill out the form, and press the submit button. We also have a support group at our website with Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. And we have a newsletter at our website where you get a free workbook from every new survivor story, all at narcissistapocalypse.com. And that is it for today's survivor story, for today's episode. So for myself and Val, we hope you have a good night.